Hey folks, welcome to What's the Dilly-o, the podcast where we get real with the people building fintech tools that actually work. I'm Kanishka, and today we're diving into a space that's usually bogged down by friction, repeated forms, and compliance chaos, identity verification. Let's get into it. Welcome. Who are you, and what is Footprint in one sentence?
My name's Eli Wachs. I'm the co-founder of Footprint. Footprint's building embedded onboarding to reduce fraud and friction from companies and their sign-up flows.
Very, very cool. There are probably 123 plus KYC vendors out there.
I think
123 that
I think Liminal just put out a report of the top 270, and Footprint was in the top 27. And it seems like hell yeah, and I'm like, that's a pretty big number. Like, let's see where we are in the 27 before we really, order champagne to the office.
Fair enough, and that doesn't bode well for the Dilly Labs vendor library because it seems like we have about a 50% miss rate on all the KYC vendors out there. So
Well,
I'm
do you
gonna
have the
go look
top
up.
27? Make sure you have, as long as you have the top 27, which
I
is the exact right cutoff number. Like when people are like, how many tools should I look at in RFP? Normally 27's where you land on.
That's where you solve the secretary problem. It's at the
Exactly.
27th mark. You're just like, oh, that's the one. That
Exactly.
vendor.
Exactly. We've already done the porta potty problem. Exactly.
Fair enough. Okay, so 250 plus KYC vendors out there. Footprints in the top 27 as
And
self-admitted,
that's
right?
that's final. Like that's,
That,
there's
that-
no, you can't object to that. Our investors can ask for their money back. We're in the top 27. Sorry. Or you're welcome.
Okay, fair enough. How do you differentiate from the other 26 ahead of you? Ahead.
I think there are a couple of things about Footprint. One is that we really think of ourselves as embedded onboarding. So, what I mean by that is we live on the front end. It can be in a very invisible way, but it lets us do a couple of things. One is we're able to be a full infrastructure tool. So, as we collect information, we're vaulting it in real time. We can later on help with authentication. For us, you need to solve infrastructure to solve identity onboarding, in that fraud has a top of funnel problem. Normally, that's your data got leaked or somebody ATO'd your account. So if you're not solving the infra, you're not solving the actual issues. More broadly, by us being a security company, that's how we're the best company in the space at catching duplicate fraud. In that we're having permissible purpose to actually vault a bunch of different interesting attributes about people, from IP address to PII to PCI to banking details. That probably gets to the second part, which is I really think we are, and maybe Plaid's the other, the only end-to-end onboarding platform, and that we're the only two companies that do both KYC and bank account linking in a unified flow. Where I'd extend then us as the only tools that we also do KYB and a business bank account linking in the same flow, which Plaid doesn't do. So for me, it's if you're KYCing somebody, despite it being a pretty big market, and that's why you have 250 companies that all are doing it. Presumably, companies aren't just verifying people for fun. They're normally verifying people for compliance reasons, but it's normally also for a fraud reason of money's about to be moved. So for us, it makes a lot of sense that if we're going to authenticate you, we're going to do the thing that you're logistically going to do next, or sometimes before, right after.
Got it. Um, Makes perfect sense. Talk to me a little bit more about the vaulting because I think that is a very unique aspect of what Footprint offers.
Yeah, this was how Footprint really started, which was security, vaulting, and front end, which is maybe not ironic that those are maybe the two things that we're most known for today, but sometimes you start a company and you have these silly intuitions. For us, it was this idea that if all of these companies, and at the time when we started it, a lot of consumer fintechs had to onboard people, verify their information, and all of a sudden they were stuck with a social security number and they had to figure out how to store it. So it started with a very practical reason that you'd see a lot of companies either buy these very expensive vaulting tools that were really meant for payments that both didn't have a billing schema nor an architecture meant for onboarding PII. And second, tying those attributes back to a device level was what to us was both the best way to make identity portable, which is our broader vision at Footprint, and also in real time to be very good at catching duplicate fraud. So I think when you think about, how how will Footprint make identity portable? Like when you talk about like us having an SDK, I think vaulting is actually very much at the core of a lot of this, in that it's really solving a core issue that companies encounter when they're onboarding people, but it's done in a very, I'd say, elegant schema in that it's binding identity, one in a subtenanted enclave, and each company can have multiple even subtenants. So it solves. We say there are large companies now that get into portable identity, and people ask me what I think. And I say portable identity. I'm bad with analogies, but it's not a defined term. Portable identity is a made up term. I'd like to say we made it up. I don't have the hubris to do that. It's been a term that's been floating around for 20 years. To us, though, the best way to build portable identities is have a very clear vaulting base where you can map identity attributes for people across different enterprises and even sub companies in those enterprises. I think if you were to talk to my co-founder Alex, who's really the brains behind Footprint, he'd probably say that the most difficult, unexpected engineering problem building Footprint was the various data schemas that we worked through in building Footprint. And that's why whenever we see other companies get interested in portable identity, I always find it very curious how they're trying to solve for that. Because if you don't build from day one with that vaulting schema, I think it's very difficult to make identity portable in a way that one respects like the security aspect of if this gets breached, people are in trouble. But two, also just from a logistical standpoint.
Okay. I think maybe I missed something, or I guess just for the audience generally. Like when you say portable identity, what exactly do you mean?
The least jargony way to explain portable identity is you sign up for Robinhood and you fill out a form, and then you go to Coinbase and you type in your email or your phone number, and it says, "Oh, Eli, you're back. Here's the rest of your information. You don't have to fill it back in. We recognize you." The idea is that depending on the sector you're in, companies will experience between, call it 7.5 to 50% drop off. Pretty wide range. Oftentimes, companies, if you can improve drop off from 30% to 20%, that's meaningfully changing your ARPU or your CAC. You could take it for either metric, which will meaningfully change your revenue multiple, or even could be the difference of raising another round. And then on the flip side, we very much believe that from a fraud perspective, there are a lot of, when you go to the other 249 companies in the space, you'll see a lot of companies saying they're going to catch every fraudster. I apologize, none of us are going to do that. We're not going to do it. They're not going to do that. And it's not me doubting our competition. I have a lot of respect for them. It's more so recognition there's an infinite amount of fake identities in the world. Nobody's going to catch them all. It'd be mathematically impossible. There's a finite amount of real people. So the idea is that the moment we see a second Eli, we know one of us has to be lying. I think, though, that the third thing, which we really discovered about portable identity, which we didn't expect when we started the company, was it's often, there's a game theory when you think about portable identity in a vacuum of Uber won't want Lyft to know who they onboarded. We don't see that play out as much in practice. There are a couple industries where you will see that a bit. I think the bigger thing that you see is big enterprise A has a bunch of users on product one, and they've been struggling to cross-sell them on product two. So if you give them identity network infrastructure, that will become a much easier problem for them to solve. So that's why we can even create identity, what we call programmable identity networks for enterprises, where we didn't even do the KYC on the first batch of users. We're just giving them our infrastructure, the vaulting, the auth, to be able to re-recognize users they had on product one, make it easier for them to get on product two.
Got it. So it's, for instance, a neobank that now introduces lending, but with a different banking partner. Doesn't necessarily need to rerun that KYC flow.
You probably will, but you'll do
Yeah,
it
you will,
invisibly,
of course.
and then you'll have two different audit trails, and you can have two different SIPs applied. So if bank partner one had address match requirements, maybe they needed a driver's license, and the second bank didn't, you'll have those two different flows, different data attribute access to. But yes, exactly.
Okay, very cool. So who's it built for today? Is it growth stage fintechs, banks, marketplaces? Like, what's your sweet spot in the identity space?
We work with some of the largest payments companies in the world, some largest lenders. We work with one of the three largest bank cores in the country. We work with a ton of fintechs. I realize I'm not answering your question. To me, I think that when we think about who we've worked very well with, I think it's often companies either at that inflection point, Series A, Series B companies that are rebuilding systems, or on the flip side, companies that are more than 20 years old that have a lot of distribution and often don't have a front end and don't have a way to actually take advantage of the distribution. Uh, those are probably like the two parts of the market that we have a lot of success in. We today you don't see footprint in a lot of like pre-IPO companies.
Hmm.
Normally, those are companies for I think various different reasons. They've built a lot of homegrown systems that work pretty well, and understandably don't want to go through the lift of completely rebuilding. Versus Series A, Series B, they're open to a single SDK. And I think companies that have been around for 20 plus years, they're also willing to take the time horizon to rebuild with a best in class tool.
Got it. So it's, for lack of a better word, a tool that you're almost graduating into generally, rather than one that you're building with from day one.
Yes, I mean if you're a YC company, you can set it up in a weekend. But I think that at the end of the day, any of the companies in our space are going to do well where there's pain,
Hmm.
and you're just not going to have a ton of pain if you're just starting. You haven't really experienced fraud yet. You haven't experienced
Right.
conversion issues yet.
So you're probably not prioritizing it right now, but footprint is there when they're already feeling the pain or ready to prioritize it.
Us and 249 other companies, exactly.
But the 26 ahead of you are the ones that, or 36 ahead of you, are the ones that.
I actually don't know. They don't give a finite ranking of the top 27. There's like a chart, and it's like strategy and product breadth. I can do like I think of the 27 for like I think in like the like 10 to 14 range. I don't know exactly how they do their dots.
It's with the dart.
It's at the dot exactly. Yeah. It's great. It's very precise, very quantitative. They had Deloitte audited the results. Exactly.
Okay. If Deloitte's doing it, then I'm gonna stop smiling and know that it's serious. Um, what do folks kind of love about Footprint when they first implement it? What is like your aha, this is the greatest thing moment that
And
customers should give?
when you look at a lot of other orchestrators, a jargony laden term, but
Yeah.
often what people mean when they talk about orchestrators is this idea of you get access to a bunch of tools and then you can integrate them.
Hmm.
Footprint's taken the approach that we are building the SDK of how we think fraud tools should be put together. And that means two things. One, let's say you're having a fraud attack. You can toggle on stenciling for synthetic fraud and Footprint. And we dynamically add that to your risk engine, add rules that should decision off of it, and adjust other rules accordingly. For example, if you have a high risk of synthetic, which means you've nurtured, I haven't stolen somebody's identity, I've nurtured kind of a new identity into bureaus, you made them want to do a step up to an identity document. So it's, I think, very powerful. What Footprint is in the past, that would have meant you needed to take a couple weeks to integrate a tool. You would have needed to adjust your rules for that and then adjusted rules for everything else. Footprint in a minute does all of that for you. The other is that we can launch software updates. So if a company comes to us and says, hey, we want you to add this type of verification, or if we say, hey, we found a better way to do X, Y, or Z, we can do that and essentially launch a software update, which I think we should do. We're a software company, and go to companies and say, hey, just install this update to our packet, and you will now have a better KYB waterfall. I think those are the things that companies don't see in this space that they really get with Footprint.
Okay, fair enough. So you've kind of called yourself an orchestration company as well. How do you kind of align yourself with the other orchestrators that are out there? Are you a tool that works alongside them, or is this instead of? And I'll name a few: the Tactiles, Ocelars, Sardines of the world. Like, is this more of a partnership play, or is it more of an instead of thing?
We partner pretty closely with Tactile and Oscillator. Um, for us, it's a really big world. We've been joking a lot about all of the companies in the space. Uh, that's because there's a lot of revenue out there. I think one of the most important things as a startup is to define pretty clearly what you're not going to do. There's a huge market out there if you are the best KYC company, if you're the best bank linking company. Um, for us, I think for a while we actually were not properly competitive in deals we should have been
Mhm.
because we thought maybe one day we'll build transaction monitoring. I think one of the best decisions we made over the last year was deciding that we are not doing that because I think that made it a much easier mutual partnership for us with other companies in the space. And I think now when you look at our integrations with those companies, it's fairly cool in that both companies essentially integrate each other where they can ingest Footprint signals for transaction monitoring. Footprint, you can use our onboarding engine to essentially trigger different steps in them. It's very unique, I think, and more so, I think that it lets us focus on what we do well. It lets them focus on that as well. So, look, it's obviously an interesting market. I think all of us would be lying if it's like, oh, fully friend. But I think that what I've said for a while is that at the end of the day, most of us are too small to view each other as competitive. And if we ever get to this stage where we really want to own the market of the other, champagne problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. Okay, cool. Quick lightning round for before we kind of wrap things up. What's the most underrated risk in identity verification today?
That's a good lightning. This is what I get for not reading the questions in advance. I'm sorry. I never did this. You want to re-ask that because I've ruined any possible soundbite of that question.
That's fine. Most underrated risk in identity verification today.
Being overly confident in document verification. For a while, document verification was the best fraud tool. And by that, I mean best ROI bang for buck. Bad actors have gotten really good at defeating with this is what Gen AI is good for. Whenever a VC asks me, what are you using Gen AI? The answer is pretty much manual review. There's no Gen AI you're really using in your
Yeah,
risk models. Conversely, bad actors are really, they have a very good play. If they should raise money from VCs because they have a very good Gen AI answer.
fair enough. Gen AI is very good at faking documents. Got it. What's one KYC myth you wish would die?
That it's a checkbox. uh, we sometimes will talk to maybe companies are just smart and they do it as a negotiation tactic, but you'll sometimes speak to a company that says, "Oh, like this is just a checkbox. Why should I pay like more for this tool than somebody else?" And that's just, I think it's not the smartest way to look at this. One, it's a checkbox that if you don't, even if it's a checkbox, if you don't do it well, you're either going to lose money or lose your bank partner, which isn't good.
Fair
But
enough.
two, even once again, even if it was a checkbox, you can have a very painful implementation of the checkbox or a less painful implementation of the checkbox. So I think it just even if it were true, I still don't think it would lead to the decisions that you sometimes hear, and I don't think it's true because there's a reason that there's a lot of legislation and a lot of negative impact that can happen if you do it poorly.
Right. I'm sure it's like really tough to kind of flip that narrative, especially when folks are incredibly price sensitive and it's a very crowded marketplace as well, right? So if they're optimizing for price at that point, I guess there's very little argument for footprint other than saying like, go suffer and come back to us whenever.
Yeah, we've had it happen, and I think it's a tricky decision that would you, which quadrant do you want to end up in?
Yeah, fair enough. All right, and then this is the final question. What's the dealio with footprint in 2025? What's next?
It's been an exciting year of growth. We doubled in the first half. We plan to do it again in the second half. This is a year where we were day probably 900, I want to say now, either 899 and 900, which feels really young, but also it feels that we are starting to mature. And I think that we're seeing that in the market. We, from a brand perspective, I think are getting taken a lot more seriously. For us, you work really hard each day to build trust, and it's the biggest asset you can have. And we need to go out and continue to be the best tool for embedded onboarding. And I think that's how we'll do well by our customers, but get days and days closer to our goal of getting the amount of identity theft on the internet, which is $30 billion a year, to zero.
Fair enough. Okay. Eli, thank you so much for joining me on What's the Dealio. Congratulations on all the progress and doubling so far this year. I hope it doubles again by the end of the year. But always happy to chat.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.